Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women Talking Money podcast. I'm Gretchen from Magenta Financial Planning and She Finance, and today I'm delighted to welcome Tamsin Kane to the show. Tamsin has over 20 years' experience helping individuals and couples make sense of their money. And as one of only 40 resolution accredited divorce financial planners in the UK, she supports clients through financial challenges of divorce, helping them find amicable solutions where possible, and guiding those leaving difficult relationships to secure a fair settlement. She also works with business owners and professionals on planning for the future, helping clients understand their goals, optimize their finances, and design the life they want without fear. And through her work with Smart Divorce, Tamsin helps people navigate change with clarity, confidence, and a plan for their next chapter. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. That all sounds very great. It's all very grand when you listen to somebody else tell you about what you do, isn't it? And then you're like, oh, it's just little me doing like a bit of work.
I know. It's always very strange when you hear someone else say it. Building on it though, could you tell everyone listening a little bit more maybe about yourself and your career journey, how you've ended up being a specialist, for example, in divorce?
Yeah, of course. I've told my story a few times before. I used to be a pub manager, so I did a maths degree at university, left uni and went to manage pubs, which is the obvious stepping stone to being a financial planner or not. But it's a very good of learning how to talk to lots of different people. So I actually think it provides quite a good grounding, because we have to talk to all sorts of different people from all sorts of different walks of life, and it's definitely a good grounding for that. I came into financial planning just about the time the millennium was happening. Started working as a mortgage advisor, moved into being an IFA, and was utterly delighted when the gorgeous Steve Martin approached me and said, would you come and work with me? And I was absolutely delighted, because he was and still is my hero. I hope he's not listening, because I get all big-headed. So Smart's quite small, or was a quite small business, and because it was quite small, it was quite able to be agile, and I was given the opportunity to essentially decide who I wanted to work with. I went through a divorce myself. I've got parents who are divorced, and although actually people had said it before, I'd kind of not really got the bit between my teeth. But when I went through my divorce, my ex-husband wasn't the financial person in the relationship. I always say there's a financial person and there's a not financial person. It's, you divide and conquer. You divide all the jobs up, and he didn't do the money I did, because I worked in a money world. So it was pretty natural and pretty straightforward to me. He didn't, and even not so much really recently, but certainly within the last few years, if he gets his pension statement, he's like, what on earth does this mean? They closed his DB pension scheme at the place he works at, and he was like, don't know what that means, don't know what implications that's got for me. I was helping him arrange his mortgages for a while, and he just had no idea. And that makes you aware that if you're not the person who looks after the money, there are a lot of questions that you have, and it's a pretty scary place to be. And I wanted to help those people to be okay during divorce, to understand what divorce settlement meant to them, and to understand what it looks like in the context of their life, not in the context of somebody else's life. Yeah, Smart Divorce was launched in 2018, a long time ago now.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really interesting, because one of my questions was probably going to be around, we're going to have a conversation really about your money journey. But I think that given, what you and I do, and also the experiences that we can see of people who are going through some of these really quite significant moments in life, I'm sure that will also come out. So with the questions, if there's an example that you can give that isn't necessarily yours, but that you've seen through someone else's eyes that you've helped, then that'll always help when we're talking about things going through today's conversation. So hopefully some of those things will come up.
Of course.
So can you tell me, sort of starting off, a little bit about, I guess, you and what your earliest memory of money is, and how, reflecting on maybe what that was, how you think it might have shaped your views as an adult?
You'll like this one. So when I was very little, we haven't got a very big family. We've got quite a small family. I have an uncle. He's my mum's brother, and he had this genius way of making money grow on the lawn in my grandparents' garden. When I was much older, I figured he was actually just like chucking it when we weren't looking. But he, in my mind, he could make money grow on the garden in my grandparents' house. So that is definitely my first memory of money. I have no idea how on earth that was shaped the way I view money. I have tried to think about it actually, because there is there is a thing about your early money memories and so on as pre age 7 is supposed to shape the way you think about money, but that not a clue. I think other thing, there was very much a feeling of we don't talk about money. It was certainly it was like, no, it's rude to talk about money, it's rude to ask for money. There's a kind of, there was a very, I think it was a very, I was born in the 70s. I think it was very typical 70s. You were snuck a quid, or it was a pound note at the time, sort of giving it discreetly, and it's like, don't spend it all at once kind of thing. And I think there was probably quite a lot of that. And I guess, it's funny how you sort of don't think about, I don't think many of my memories were about money, but actually probably quite a lot of them were. We used to go, my granny lived in Bourneville, where the Cadbury factory is, and she was a Quaker, and she used to go and visit old people. I mean, she was like properly old at the time. She was like, I thought she was absolutely ancient, thought it was hilarious. She used to go and visit old people, but one of the people she visited was one of the Cadbury family, and she always used to give us £1 before we left. She was like, "Oh, put this in your money box." Yeah, as I say, not sure what they say, but perhaps the fact there are money memories there at all says a lot.
I think the one with your uncle and like scattering coins is quite interesting, because there's an element of wanting, almost like fun element to it as well.
Absolutely.
Of like kind of breaking down that. And it's a bit, isn't it, when your gran gave you, £1 to go and spend at the shops, like all of that is a joyous part of childhood money, because you do get to spend it on sweets. You don't have to pay the mortgage and all of that. So there's an element of kind of like niceness to that, actually, that it wasn't really serious.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Have you ever heard the other advisor who says that, have you ever heard of this other guy who kind of, I think he's like, mum used to like stick £5 notes on the tree? Like I've heard this before, like sort of the whole concept of money doesn't grow on trees, but actually in their garden it kind of did. And I think,
that's so cool.
all of the, yeah. Anyway, we digress. But I think it's also, isn't it, about how seriously like we take it. And at least like when in the 70s we did have physical stuff about money that we could understand, which is so different now for kids who are all using cards and tapping. And my niece has got a bank account at 6 years old, where she's watching the money go in but not necessarily got the ability to spend any cash.
I remember my son saying, and I can't even remember what it was about, but he wanted something. And I was like, no, I haven't got any money for that at the moment. And he went, well, just go and get it out the machine. And it was like, well, like you have to have it to get it out of the machine. The machine isn't like another magic money tree. Oh, just get it out the machine. That was like, not quite pulled those two things together.
I know, and I think it's harder for them, in that you're remembering money stories that feel silly or completely innocent, or small things, but they're not really getting that same experience now. So I guess that's something that everyone is thinking about. How can we develop those money things for younger people as well?
Yeah, definitely. And that, some of that has to fall on the education system. It's got to fall on schools. There's got to be better financial education. It gobsmacks me, some of the things we teach kids to cook, we teach kids to add up, we teach them to write, we teach them the joy of reading. Everybody in the world has to use money, and yet we don't value it enough to teach our kids about it. It dumbfounds me why that doesn't happen more.
And certainly given that, as you say, we all have to deal with it. And I think it has come up in another conversation with me that I've had on the podcast around advisors wanting to contribute to that gap that we see in schools, but the challenge being that we can't, ultimately it does actually have to be taught, not just someone go in and kind of talk for half an hour and then never go back again.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately then it has to become part of lesson plan, and then teachers actually have to understand what they're talking about or be impassioned about what they're talking about, and that's a big challenge when we've got a financially illiterate majority.
Yeah, but it's a challenge, but it's one we're going to have to make. We need to encourage more people to invest in themselves, to have pensions, to just invest. I mean, the proportion of the country don't know how to invest and don't understand what debt is, don't know how to manage it, don't know enough about mortgages. They might have one, but don't really know enough about it. And on the topic of divorce, don't understand that actually if you get married, you are making a financial commitment to another person. It's exactly the same as becoming a partner in a business. And you wouldn't do that without knowing what the financial implications are. But people go into marriage without having the faintest clue what the financial implications are. And that's really frightening.
Yeah, I think that's very, very, very true. And just coming back to sort of talking a little bit more before, I want to touch on the divorce thing again, but a little bit just more about I guess I'd like to talk about money worries. And I think everyone, it ties in quite nicely to not understanding money, but everyone's got money worries, things that might keep us up at night, or
Sure.
And it doesn't really matter actually how well equipped you are to handle those or how much you know about money. So have you got anything, maybe one money worry that shaped your choices that you can think of in the past that has sort of really kind of brought you up sharp and gone, I've definitely got to make a right choice at this point?
Yeah, and this is from quite a long time ago, pre getting into financial services. And it's not that I've got no money worries since coming into financial services, because like you say, everybody does. But this is a really strong memory. And it was when I first moved in with my now ex-husband, and we both had, so I was working in a pub full time, albeit as an assistant manager. I was still paid peanuts. He was working as a forklift truck driver, so neither of us were earning huge amounts of money. We live in a nice area of South Manchester. And I remember we rented this flat, and it cost us what we thought was an absolute fortune. And we were really, really skinned. And we had to go down the back of the sofa trying to find £1 to go and buy a bottle of milk. And it was at that point we were both like, we need to hand our notice in on this flat. We just can't afford to be here. And we managed to get on the list for there are a lot of council flats in Manchester that aren't or weren't occupied at this time. They're like 3-4 bedroom ones were all occupied, but like 2-bedroom flats, council flats, were kind of quite widely available in the Manchester City Council area. So you could there was a kind of way you could get a council flat even if you sort of wouldn't be on the normal list. So we ended up in a council flat because it was the only way we could kind of manage to pay rent. And in a like really rough area, we started off with a drug dealer living upstairs and ended up with a prostitute. You might have to put a warning on this podcast now. It was really rough, and that that kind of does shape you. It does shape how you think about money.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the kind of worries and big decisions that you have to make around money when you know that you can't, that there's not really another, or there is another choice, is that, unfortunately you don't pay your rent and then you get into all kinds of different situations. But that those are really tough decisions to make, aren't they? Do you think that you could think about maybe your personal values and how they guide your financial decisions?
Yes, I think my from a personal perspective, hugely greatly value the relationship I have with my kids. Anybody who knows me will tell you that they come first. They're grown-ups now. Well, they're grown-ups. They live in my house still. 22 and nearly 21. And they both work. And I do everything for both of them. And that kind of family and loyalty and that's probably the main thing that guides me. And doing things for the right reasons. It's never about, it's about caring and it's about helping people. It's never about kind of mounds of money. I remember kind of years ago, it was about keeping hold, making sure people kept hold of the money and making sure that you weren't, that you kind of grew their wealth rather than kind of the joy of watching people spend it. And a huge part of the joy that I have working for Smart is watching people live their absolute dreams. Emily's going off to Australia for months at a time, just living their best lives. People gifting, Steve calls it gifting with a warm hand. I'm sure he's pinched that from somebody. That's a lovely phrase, to help people to help their own kids and grandkids while they're still alive, and they can watch them enjoy it, and they can see how they're benefiting and how their hard work's helped others. That for me is an absolute joy. It's never about, and I don't work with people whose plan is to accumulate more and more and more and more and do nothing with it. It's about helping others, and it's about helping people live the absolute best life that they possibly can.
And that's really interesting, because my next question was around balancing enjoying life today and planning for tomorrow. And I think, we talk about that a lot in financial planning, as you say, helping people do wonderful things in their life, and helping family if that's what they want, or spending their money in the way that they want to on what they want to do. But for people listening who are at an earlier stage that maybe we deal with, where actually you're accumulating and you are trying to balance living, life for today with thinking about the reality that we do know that the state isn't going to provide everything we need if we live this long life that could potentially be very long with healthcare, etc. I guess my question was, how do you balance that? And it was to be to you, but I'm quite interested to also understand from your experiences the types of things that you're talking about with clients when those conversations come up.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? None of us know what's around the corner, and you'll know, I'm sure, very well, Paul Armson. And I've read his book, I know his story, and the story about his mum and dad, which is, I'm sure you can find it on the internet if you haven't had it. I don't want to try and pinch his story too much, but it was essentially, you don't know what's around the corner and you don't know what's going to happen. So to an extent, you want to live the life that you would like today, but you've also got to have an eye on tomorrow. So it's not about spend everything today, because if you do that, you will be working till you're 100, and that's not realistic. So it is a question of balance, isn't it? It's, making sure you doing the sensible things. If your job has a pension in it, it's a no-brainer to dive into that pension, to get yourself signed up for it. Like, why would you opt out? It's the only way you can get that free money is by being in the pension. And yeah, just not spending everything that you've got. Save for things that you want, so that you're not constantly getting into the debt with things. And I think it's a balancing thing. Make sure you've got some savings for emergencies. But there are, there's a kind of list, isn't there, of things where if you're starting from scratch and you've got nothing, like, join the pension scheme, build yourself some emergency savings, but not at the risk of, well, I'm never going out and I'm never buying myself a new pair of shoes, because you're just not going to want to work then. You've got to work for some enjoyment as well.
Yeah. And I think there's a really interesting crossover with everything at the moment, because regulated financial advice is very different from, a lot of the social media influencers, which might be like savvy saving. or savvy spending, and I think it's about having an understanding of that, so that there's a difference, but also actually, gathering. For me, it's like, if I was doing it now, I'd be like, give me all the information. Give me all the information that I can get so that I can make really good decisions about the things that I want to. So then when I can eventually go to a financial planner, because I'm in the position where I do need, regulated advice, I'm like empowered with the fact that I understand, basics, and I've done my best with what I've got.
Yeah, definitely. I when my kids were in their sort of early to mid teens, I got them to read Money Moments by Jason Butler, which is such a brilliant, like, starter for 10 and sort of entry level book. It's like, what's a loan, what's a mortgage, what's a credit card, how like what's sensible spending, how to kind of think about what you're buying. It's about 220 pages long. It's not War and Peace. I mean, I read it on a flight to Spain, so there you go. It's less than 3 hours worth of reading, but it's such a good entry level book. And then if you storm your way through that, the Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel is the next one, and I think next step to getting some good background information and understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, I do think that, like, I'm still learning things about, like, saving stuff and mortgage apps and things like that can really help, if you're in a position where you don't, you're weighing up, can I go save for my holiday and my emergency fund, but also overpay on my mortgage? There's like loads of stuff out there now that can help you do that. And I think, it's probably quite overwhelming, but I think breaking it down to small things is great, and there's so much stuff out there now alongside all these great resources. So what I'd like to ask, what saving or money habit do you think has made the biggest difference to you? I think especially since you've spoken about having, the children, everything going, them still living with you and things like that. Be quite interesting for people to know, over that period when you've had young children, like, what's the good habit that you could look back on and think, yeah, that was good.
So I'm going to be really honest. I had dreadful money habits. I think the issue is, if you go through divorce, everything that you did that were good habits kind of goes to pot, because suddenly you go from having one house and two of you living there, and we had pretty decent salaries by the time we got divorced, but then everything's got to go to pay for two houses, and your financial life turns on its head overnight. And so my good money habits of pre-divorce sort of had to take a back seat, because I was supporting two children financially. And so I'm now getting back into the habit, and over the last few years have been getting back into the habit of keeping money going into my pension. Both my kids know how important that is, and at 21 and 22 both have pensions that they're paying money into it. My daughter said to me yesterday, she got her pension statement, she was dead proud of herself, because I think it got like $3,000 in it, and I'm like, imagine how much is going to be in there by the time you get to my age. It's going to be, there's going to be a good big chunk of money. So that would be my kind of biggest money habit that you should keep up. It's like, put money in your pension from day one, from as early as possible. From the second somebody says, do you want a workplace pension? Yes, I do. Get the money going in. Don't even see it. Comes out before I get anywhere near it. Just because then you benefit, aren't you? As it all accumulates, and then compounding interest is like magic. It is that magic money tree.
So this is really interesting that it's come up, because I couldn't agree more. I think, if you're going into a employed role, then why wouldn't you take the free money? It doesn't make sense why you wouldn't take the free money. But of course, we're living now in a world where there are more startups and more self-employed people than ever before. And we are setting up businesses, and women are setting up businesses more than ever before. We're trying to merge our self-employment around our childcare responsibilities and aging parent responsibilities, etc. And so that default workplace pension might not be there.
Yep.
So I think that we all need to be aware that we're going to have to make some decisions on that when we're in those roles of self-employment, that it still needs to be absolutely on our agenda. And you need to be asking at my accountant, can I afford at the end of the year to put some money into my pension and get that into a regular decision tree?
Yeah, I think even if you're self-employed, like, know what you would have going into a pot if you were employed, and just replicate that. I know you're not getting the free bit because you're self-employed, so you don't get the free bit that an employer would chuck in. If you know what you would get going, if you're looking at 8%, 9%, 10%, if you can do it, 10% is easier numbers. Chuck it in every month. Do it as an employer contribution. You've got your corporation tax relief. You don't have to pay NI. Just do it from day one. If you've never had it, you're not going to miss it.
If you're not a company, and even if you're not a company, you're going to get your personal tax relief anyway. Exactly. So, we know that makes absolute sense. But I do think that there is a gap, because I meet a lot of women who say, oh yeah, well, it's on my list, but the first couple of years I've been worrying about doing it because I didn't know whether I'd have enough, and that kind of thing. But of course we're still prioritizing that we're going to go on holiday, which I get. I'm absolutely not criticizing that at all, but I think comes back to this balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so from a perspective about, I guess what we were talking about around your work with people who are getting divorced, and I think maybe we could pull on that a little bit around one of my final questions, which is what one step every woman could take towards financial freedom. I'd like to just, try and think around that, about maybe what step you think would be great for listeners to think, actually, that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
We might have covered pensions enough.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there, actually. I think everybody, man or woman, should have their own savings account in their own name, their own bank account with savings in it in their own name. I've heard financial planners suggest, or financial advisors suggest, that it should be a secret account. As somebody who works with lots of people going through divorce, it's secret money that causes a massive problem. So I would say, if you've got a good marriage, you shouldn't need to keep the money secret, but you should absolutely have money in your own name in a bank account that you can get hold of at a moment's notice. And I think that's massively important. I would never advocate people in a relationship hiding anything or in terms of money, because I think that's a hiding to nothing. That's just going to cause enormous problems. But bank account with some money in it. So should anything for any reason go pear-shaped, you've got something there that's yours and that you can disappear with should you need to. It has another phrase, but I won't be using it on your podcast, because again, you'd have to have big warnings about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think everyone kind of knows what it is. But yeah, I think, for multiple reasons, okay, that not just for in the situation of divorce, because we also know that, when you're bereaved or there's other challenges going on, if healthcare, etc., or a deterioration of health, that having a pot that is entirely yours and you are able to access without any kind of other issues makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. And so, final couple of questions then. What does living your best financially free life kind of look like to you?
So I'm really bad at this. So my colleague Steve reckons that I would rock up to work even if I won the lottery tomorrow, because I'm that person. So being financially free is about choice. So it's not having to go to work if you don't want to. It's about doing all the things that you choose that you want to do. It's about being able to treat the kids if you want to do that. It's being able to help in whatever way you choose. And it's being able to, it's choice, isn't it? It's about living your best life. and being able to have the experiences that you want to have. For me, I'm never going to find a Porsche sat outside my house that's mine. You can come around and check that out. That's not the thing. It's about experiences. It's about spending time doing fun stuff.
Sorry if I lost you.
I'm still here.
Good. I got the Porsche bit. I'm just going to make a note that it was then so I can edit a little bit.
That's okay.
Okay, so let's go for the final question, if that's okay, which is, I guess, for you to share with our listeners how they can find out more about you, what you do, maybe something's resonated that they feel they'd like to find out more about, you know, is it LinkedIn, other socials, what sort of space?
I am on LinkedIn as Tamsin Kane. You can find me on Instagram we're Smart Divorce. We're on Facebook at Smart Divorce.
Tamsin, thank you so much for talking to me today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.